Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into what is honestly one of the most fascinating historical mysteries in the entire world of philosophy and religion. We're going to explore how a single, totally misunderstood philosophical concept practically erased a major world religion from the very country where it was born. I mean, it sounds almost impossible, right? How does that even happen? But the concept of non-self, well, it wasn't just some abstract high-level theory debated by ancient scholars in dusty rooms. As the source material really clearly outlines, this specific idea acted as the literal trigger for a monumental historical collapse. The misunderstanding of what non-self truly means created a domino effect that permanently altered the course of human history in India. Chapter 1. The Ideological Clash. Okay, so to really understand this collapse, we actually have to jump back and look at the philosophical landscape of ancient India, right when the Buddha was actively teaching. At that time, the mainstream thought was traditional Brahmanism, and they had these two massive key concepts. First, Atman, which means your true spiritual self or your soul, and then Brahman, which represents the heavenly spirit, the divine. The prevailing belief was that these two things are fundamentally one and the same. And honestly, it's a beautiful concept, the idea that the core of our soul is the exact same light as the divine itself. But, well, here is exactly where the ideological clash happens. Because while the idea that the soul and the divine are one is fundamentally sound, the source points out that this traditional Brahmanic view got really fixed. It became rigid. It basically turned into an excuse to just accept the status quo. People started using it to justify corruption, the worldly attachments, and even societal failings by just saying, well, hey, my soul is already divine, so it doesn't matter what I do. Early Buddhism emerged as a very strict challenge to that. The Buddha taught that, no, you can't just sit back. You have to actively shed your physical ego, your worldly desires, and your attachments to actually find that truth. He absolutely didn't want to deny the existence of the soul itself. He just wanted people to stop using it as a convenient shield for their bad behavior.
Chapter 2. The Fatal Misinterpretation.
So the original teachings were completely meant to correct a societal flaw, right? But as time passed, they were drastically misunderstood by later academics. It's like a giant pendulum swing. You have extreme attachment on one side, which the Buddha was actively fighting against, but then, as later academic schools of Buddhism emerged, specifically groups like the Sarvastivada school, they swung that pendulum entirely in the opposite direction, toward extreme materialism. They essentially took the instruction to shed the ego and warped it into the self literally does not exist at all. The source text calls this a complete failure to find the middle way. And the source text points out exactly how this creates a massive, fatal, philosophical trap. Just think about it for a second. If religion is all about a journey toward enlightenment, but you start teaching that the self doesn't even exist, then who exactly is achieving that enlightenment? If you're just a temporary physical body, just a random collection of elements that permanently vanishes the second you die, the entire foundation of spiritual practice completely falls apart. It's a massive logical black hole. Chapter 3. Why Buddhism Declined in India. Let's map this out and see how this actually builds. How does a debate over the existence of the soul actually destroy a physical institution? Well, we start with those original teachings aimed at simply shedding the ego. Then academic Buddhism rises up and misinterprets this as total nihilism, the complete denial of the soul. This instantly puts them on a massive collision course with the core beliefs of the Indian people. So by the time the violent Islamic invasions of the 12th and 13th centuries occur, the religion is already completely hollowing out from the inside. The text outlines this core paradox that was, frankly, ideological suicide. You see, the vast majority of the Indian masses firmly believed in reincarnation. But reincarnation logically requires a soul, right? Something that carries over from one life to the absolute next. Because these later Buddhist academics started pushing this materialistic version of non-self, literally insisting the soul did not exist, the common people just couldn't reconcile it. They thought, wait, if I have no soul, how on earth can I be reincarnated? Consequently, the masses felt totally alienated and simply migrated back to Hinduism. Long before foreign invaders actually physically destroyed the monasteries and tragically wiped out the monks, the ideological foundation had already completely crumbled. Chapter 4. The True Non-Self. So the crucial point is, if that academic interpretation was a massive, historically fatal mistake, what did the Buddha actually mean? It is so important to understand the stark difference between the false version and the true version here. The false non-self is basically materialistic nihilism. It demands self-denial and the literal shattering of your existence. But the true non-self,
That is all about shedding your worldly, physical ego. And why? So you can experience true development from the middle way, revealing and actually expanding your true spiritual soul. The source material is incredibly explicit about this, particularly highlighting the Buddha's stern view on that erroneous course of teachings. It states that the spiritual self must absolutely not be destroyed. Instead, the true self is something that must be sought out. It needs to be polished and actively developed as you progress towards the divine. To deny the ego is absolutely necessary, yes, but to deny the soul is a tragic, tragic error. Your true self is meant to grow. Chapter 5. Becoming Transparent. And this brilliantly illustrates how a centuries-old philosophical history actually applies to us today. In a really pivotal Dharma talk from August 1992, the exact mindset we should adopt was given this beautiful metaphor. It warns us against repeating that historical mistake. Do not take a hammer to yourself and shatter your existence into dust. Instead, realize that right now, our egos make us like clouded glass, full of impurities and worldly attachments. Our goal isn't to destroy the glass. Our goal is to polish away that cloudiness until we become a brilliantly clear, totally transparent crystal. So here is a really actionable framework the source leaves us with. Step 1, just recognize that you have an ego and that it acts exactly like that clouded glass, obscuring your true nature. Step 2, do the hard work of the middle way. Actually polish away your extreme worldly attachments and your physical desires. And step 3, as that cloudiness starts to fade, you don't disappear into nothingness. Actually, scratch that, it's the exact opposite. You develop and expand your transparent, true spiritual self. You become a refined crystal, letting the divine light shine right through you. The massive decline of an entire spiritual tradition in India literally came down to a failure to understand this exact difference. The difference between destroying yourself and refining yourself. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to think about your own life, your own attachments, and your own ego. How will you polish your crystal today? Thanks so much for joining us, and keep seeking that middle way.